Well, when people say what's finally making in-store scalable, I kind of say, I would correct that statement. It's not finally. I mean, in-store wasn't really struggling with scale. Scale was always there, right? I mean, if I look at Loblaw, for that matter, we operate across the country. We have more than 2,300 stores. We process over 1 billion transactions a year. So enough signals, enough traffic. We have a huge screen network ourselves already. So it was never about scale. It was always about relevance, right? There's a lot of inventory around retail media available in the stores, which look like retail media, but didn't really act like retail media. You know, there were screens placed across the stores, but they might not have been in the right place, in the right moment when the customer is making the purchase. So in-store media has to act that way, right? What's changing now is that retailers are setting up the infrastructure with intent around driving relevance, making sure the customer experience, shopper experience is never impacted, and that is what is changing. So what you'll see over time is sensors coming into the stores, point of sale integrations, right? Digital screens placed with a proper purpose in the aisles, in the places where it makes sense to play the media. It's never about just going at spray and pray. It's more about being contextually placing the ads in real time where the customer is making a decision. So it doesn't really feel intrusive, right? So that is what is changing. And once this happens, with the usage of first-party data that we're generating, using that first-party data to support measurement. Like for the longest time, we've in-store media revolved around using measurement multipliers. They were not using real-world sales transactions data tied back. Now that is changing, right? So measurement is changing. That is bringing in that confidence among the customers. And then the flow of programmatic in the stores, right? That is changing, that is impacting. So that overall, like this entire package of doing or placing the infrastructure with intent, using first-party data, and of course the automations and programmatic, that is what is bringing in scale, or that is what's going to change the way scale actually comes up.
Pratyush, you outlined the modern in-store experience so well. Wanted to take it down to the modern aisle that you've been shaping. How do you balance shopper experience with monetization without crossing the line into disruption?
So the word is relevance, right? I think I used it earlier as well. So relevance, context, these are things that matter. In-store is a very good balance between the conventional old school world, but now it's basically using best of both the worlds, right? It's not 100% digital. It's not like an on-site ad where you could just automate the entire thing. Why? Because every store is different. There's local context, right? Customers in each store behave differently. So if I was, as a retailer, was to set up screens just with the intent of monetizing or making money, I would not be able to scale beyond a certain point, because then I'm letting go of shopper experience. So for me, end of the day, customer experience or shopper experience comes the first. That is what drives my decisions to how do I go and put screens in the stores or place the screens in the stores. So that is how we think of it. So when I talk about relevance in the aisle, that has to feel so seamless that it never feels intrusive. I heard somebody say your store should not look like a Times Square. I would say there's something wrong if your store looks like a Times Square, as long as those screens actually were placed in the right way, where the customer didn't even notice. It felt native. So that is what we try to do. You would never see a digital end cap showing a completely different product. Like I wouldn't have an end cap with a beverage while the ad is of a detergent. That doesn't really make sense unless until I was probably promoting a bundle or something. So these are things that matter most, and hence, yeah, it's not only about monetization, it's about shopper experience that helps us drive those things. So there's strict guardrails that you need to have in stores, right? As I said, local context, and hence guardrails matter a lot, depending upon the banner or depending upon the region, depending upon how the customers behave in certain stores, depending upon how For that matter, look at our like we operate multiple banners. We have full serve banners. Then we also have discount. Discount shoppers are different than the full scale conventional banners, and hence you have to have different kind of content, creative, right? So they all play a role, and hence they all have to work like a clockwork. They have to work in tandem to make sure that the customer experience is intact and it feels native. That is how I would say we are looking at monetization without disrupting the experience.
Pratyush, that idea of relevance and context is really grounded in personalization and first-party data. So, want to know what role does first-party data play in personalizing in-store media, especially when shoppers expect relevance, as you said, but also privacy?
Yeah. So, I think I also said in-store media is not exactly 100% a replica of an online world. It's a good balance of old school while we are also looking at the new ways of how we target customers. So personalization is what makes this less creepy, right? If I put it that way. Because in the in-store context, it's not about singling out a customer. You can't single out a customer. We're looking at signals that are now creating missions that we can go after, right? So a couple of things that first-party data does in the store. First and foremost, as I said at the beginning, right, is we're putting stuff in the stores based on intent, right? Now it's intentful placements. So first-party data helps us decide what content shows up where, when, why. So it's no more the same thing where you have all the screens in the store playing the same message, right? It's now contextualized to the aisle. That makes a lot of difference. But what it also does is it brings in that confidence because it's no more considered generic. So for the longest time, in-store media was looked at as a channel which most of the marketers used as an awareness channel. They didn't really know if they could literally go and drive an impact and measure it. Right now, because we are intentfully placing the placements or the screens in the stores, we are able to localize that content to the aisle, and hence it's no more generic, it's targeted. Now, when these two work in tandem, there's another huge unlock that happens, and that is measurement, right? Because of this, we are now able to go and report in closed loop measurement. We can use those store transactions, the store signals that are generated based on the customer purchase behavior. We can tie it back to the actual transactions and report. That has been something which has been missing for the longest time. The reason retailers or brands didn't have confidence in in-store media as a performance channel was because there was no measurement. They could never go and point and say that if I put in X dollar, I get 2X or 3X or whatever, right? It was always based on, I drove X number of impressions. There were no real metrics that were tied to sales. Now, with measurement coming in, you can actually go and say, my in-store media drives incrementality. It drives new customer behavior or new customer acquisitions, right? It drives category growth. So these are real tangible metrics, and that is what makes it amazing. But all three working together is the fourth thing, which is now we can use all of these measurement and the signals that are generated to make it omni-channel. We can go upstream and use these signals to create that up of the funnel or top of the funnel communication, say on the CTV, while we can take it down to the mobile and app level where the customer is making the shopping lists and aid them in making their decision. So it's a truly omnichannel experience. So in-store is no more living on an island. It's actually a part of the group and is acting in a symphony.
So how do you connect all those signals, as you said, from in-store to the transaction to offsite? You mentioned CTV. Also, there's mobile, social. How do you connect all those signals together?
See, I think it all comes down to an orchestration layer, right? That matters, and this is where the retailers or the RMNs have to play that role. We can't expect the DSPs and SSPs of the world to just consume raw data and make sense out of it, because that just creates friction in the system. So it's up to us to create that, to enable that layer where all of these things can be translated, comprehended, articulated in the most legible manner for those channels to consume and make sense out of it, right? So when I say measurement is happening in the store based on the transactions that are generated, for the longest time we were using multipliers, right? We used to use impression multipliers as to how many people walked into a store, how many transactions happened, and hence I can say that these many people saw the ad. It's not limited to that anymore. We are able to use the sensors which, without identifying a person's any of those demographics or any personal info, we're able to still count how many bodies actually had crossed the screen, what was the dwell time. So the accuracy levels have increased. We can then use that data to go and measure against it to actually go and quantify how many sales happened. How did the aisle showing a certain ad for a certain product, did it contribute to incremental sales for that particular product? So these are things that then we can use then we bundle those signals, ship it out, use our orchestration layers, our audience creation tools that we have. So we have at Loblaw Advance, we do take pride in the fact that we built a lot of sophisticated tools where we're able to put all of these and create those strong customer segments, which can then be pushed out upstream to a lot of external channels for off-site targeting or even personalizing content for them on site. And that is what is enabling this entire omnichannel experience.
Pratyush, the NRF Big Show is a perfect vantage point to look ahead at the advances, innovations that are happening or that you want to see in connected retail environments. Is there anything that you either have a wish list or that you're expecting to see in terms of what will change the way brands plan and measure in store?
So, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, and I would love to see this happen, is how brands move from buying in-store like they would have bought digital media 15 years back to more of an outcome-based approach. As of now, in-store is still bought with these many screens, these many impressions is what I'll get, and hence I'm going and putting in X amount of dollars. That needs to change. We need to move to a level where we are able to first replicate performance consistently, right? So if I'm a retailer or if I'm an RMN that is promising a certain outcome or certain performance to my advertiser, I should be able to replicate it over time. I should be able to do it consistently. That brings in confidence, right? But once that happens, people should move from buying screen placements or impressions to outcomes, saying, I want to drive X amount of incremental sales, or this is what I want. This is why I want to place my media budget. So as of now, we still see that while 90% of transactions, at least in Canada, 90% of transactions still happen in the store. The love that in-store media gets is very low. We get like 2% or 3% of the media investments. That needs to change, but that will change only when the advertisers have confidence in the outcomes, when they know that we can consistently go and hit those numbers and it's not a fluke. So that is where I would want to see the industry going. I don't think anyone's doing it yet or anyone's doing it perfectly. People have been making efforts. We've made efforts only to realize that we were probably ahead of time because the advertisers themselves not ready. It also brings in the fact that measurement standards are not set yet, right? Different RMNs use different methodologies to measure, and hence the same. So there's no standardization. That is something that needs to change as well. So maybe industry bodies need to come together to help standardizations of measurement, but at the same time, outcome-based planning and approach.